Darkness falls over Nanga Parbat's base camp on June 22, 2013. High in the Himalayas, exhausted climbers from 6 countries drift to sleep inside their tents, unaware of the horror about to unfold. Suddenly, gunmen dressed in military uniforms storm the camp. Panic spreads as shouts echo through the thin mountain air. Climbers are dragged from their tents, bound and forced to kneel on the icy ground. One by one, gunshots pierce the silence of the night. By dawn, 11 are dead, including a local guide. What drove these attackers to target unarmed mountaineers in one of the world's most remote places? Let's dive into the details of this horrible night. Nanga Parbat towers in the Himalayas, an 8,126-meter behemoth known as the Killer Mountain. It lies in the Gilgit-Baltistan region of Pakistan-administered Kashmir, a place of both natural splendor and political volatility. Over decades, this region has witnessed increasing unrest, sectarian tensions, militant activity, and limited governance. In recent years, Pakistan's northern areas have become a haven for extremist groups like the Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan, TTP, emboldened by drone strikes targeting their leaders. The assassination of Wali-ur-Rahman in a U.S. drone strike in May 2013 is the trigger for what unfolds at Nanga Parbat's base camp a month later. The Taliban's response is swift. A new faction, Junud-ul-Hifsa, forms with a specific agenda, targeting foreign nationals as symbols of Western influence. The base camp at Nanga Parbat, a seemingly serene spot surrounded by peaks and glaciers, becomes the chosen ground for their vengeance. June 22, 2013. It's around 10 p.m., and the base camp, located at 4,200 meters, is quiet. Climbers from across the world are here. 3 Ukrainians, 2 Slovakians, 2 Chinese, 1 American of Chinese descent, 1 Lithuanian, and a Sherpa from Nepal. These adventurers have come to test their limits against Nanga Parbat's treacherous slopes. Around the same time, 16 armed attackers approach the base camp from below. They've trekked for over 18 hours to reach this isolated spot, guided by 2 kidnapped local guides. Their uniforms resemble those of local security forces, aiding their infiltration. The abducted guides are forced at gunpoint to lead the attackers, who are well prepared, carrying AK-47s, knives, ropes, and a brutal agenda. The silence of the night cloaks their arrival. At 10:30 p.m., the attackers reach the outskirts of the base camp. A few climbers hear rustling sounds, but dismiss it as wind. The attackers split into smaller groups, each assigned to a specific set of tents. They begin their assault quickly and without warning. The base camp is small, with about 25 people, including the climbers and local staff. It takes just minutes for the attackers to round up the foreign mountaineers. The gunmen demand the climbers' passports, money, and phones. Confusion turns to terror as the gunmen speak harshly in Urdu, Pashto, and Shina, languages unfamiliar to most of the climbers. The abducted guides, at gunpoint, translate the demands. The climbers, many still in their sleeping bags, are dragged out of their tents. Hands are tied behind their backs, and they are forced to kneel in a row, facing the other way. At 10:45 p.m., the attackers gather the stolen items, destroying any communications devices found. Satellite phones, Thuraya phones, and radios are smashed. The attackers know they must prevent any signal for help. Meanwhile, the climbers, shivering, exhausted, and now bound, are forced to endure the terrifying ordeal. At 11 p.m., the attackers test the captives' knowledge of Islamic rituals. They demand that the climbers recite prayers. For most of the foreigners, this demand is incomprehensible. The tension is thick as the attackers pace behind the kneeling climbers. The mountaineers' faces are pressed into the cold ground, their breaths heavy with fear. A Lithuanian climber tries to explain that he is not American, a desperate attempt to survive, but it falls on deaf ears. The attackers are ruthless. One gunman points his weapon at Chen Honglu, the Chinese-American climber. Chen tries to break free, moving to tackle the gunman. It's an act of defiance, but it only escalates the brutality. Another attacker reacts instantly, firing at Chen's back. He collapses to the ground. Chen's death disrupts the attacker's original plan to use him as a hostage for leverage. Angered by the unexpected twist, the gunmen hasten their lethal agenda. At 11:15 p.m., the climbers remain kneeling. One by one, the gunmen step behind each victim. The methodical execution begins. The 3 Ukrainians are among the first shot, their bodies falling limp in the darkness. The Slovakians follow, then the Lithuanians and Chinese climbers. The Nepali Sherpa is killed last. The attackers move efficiently, firing at close range. Some of the mountaineers die instantly. Others struggle for a few agonizing moments before succumbing to their wounds. The attackers yell slogans as they proceed, invoking Osama bin Laden's name and framing the massacre as revenge for the drone strike that killed Wali-ur-Rahman. The killing spree continues until 11:45 p.m. By then, 11 people are dead, 10 foreign mountaineers and 1 local guide. The attackers' leader signals the end of the operation. Satisfied with their brutality, the attackers regroup. They fire a few more shots to ensure no one is left alive. The gunmen chant triumphantly, asserting their victory over the infidels on the sacred mountain. At midnight, the attackers retreat swiftly, descending the mountain. They begin their 5-hour journey toward a remote village where they plan to shed their uniforms and blend back into the local population. The attackers move silently, knowing that time is against them. Military response teams are likely already preparing for rescue operations at first light. Back at the base camp, the survivors, mostly local support staff spared by the attackers, start to untie themselves. They see the bodies sprawled across the ground, lifeless and bloodied. Among them is Sher Khan, a Pakistani climber who had initially been part of the expedition. Though spared, he is traumatized by what he has just witnessed. He and others try to check for signs of life among the fallen climbers, but it is too late for most. The camp is a grim scene of broken tents, scattered belongings, and the unmistakable scent of death. At 1 a.m., Zheng Jingchuan, the Chinese mountaineer who managed to hide in a trench during the massacre, emerges from his hiding spot. He makes his way cautiously back to the base camp. Using his satellite phone, which he managed to keep hidden, he contacts authorities. It's the first call for help. His message is relayed, and preparations for a rescue missions begin. The gunmen, meanwhile, reach the village by 5 a.m. They bury their uniforms in haste, changing into local attire. By sunrise, they've dispersed among the residents, blending seamlessly into the remote terrain of Gilgit-Baltistan. Their departure is as stealthy as their arrival, leaving behind no obvious trace. At 6 a.m., the Pakistani military scrambles helicopters from Skardu, the nearest airbase. It takes another hour for them to reach Nanga Parbat's base camp. When the helicopters finally touch down, they are greeted by the sight of death and devastation. Bodies are found strewn in front of tents, some still tied with ropes. Medical personnel rush to the site, but the damage is done. 11 climbers lie dead, while a few local survivors, still in shock, try to recount the nightmare that unfolded. The rescue operation starts around 7:30 a.m. Survivors are airlifted to safety. The dead are carefully prepared for transport. It's a grim scene. Blood, broken tents, scattered gear. Zhang, one of the survivors, looks shaken as he describes the horror. His words make it clear. This was no random act. It was a calculated strike. Back in Islamabad, shockwaves hit the government hard. The attack is a huge embarrassment. Questions flood in. How did this happen? Why was there no protection at the base camp? Within hours, Pakistan's Interior Minister, Nisar Ali Khan, takes drastic action. He suspends the Inspector General of Police and the Chief Secretary of Gilgit-Baltistan for failing to secure the climbers' safety. An inquiry is promised, and the pressure to catch the culprits is immense. The very next day, June 24th, Nisar addresses the National Assembly. He reveals that a special investigation team is already at work. The team is led by Chief of Army Staff General Ashfaq Parvez Kayani. It includes intelligence chiefs like ISI's Director General, Zahirul Islam, and local police officials from Gilgit-Baltistan. This investigation needs to deliver results fast. The world is watching, and the stakes are high. Meanwhile, in Diamir, a local jirga, a traditional council of elders, also forms. These local leaders play a key role. They know the terrain, the people, and the rumors. The jirga aims to help the authorities find the attackers hiding somewhere in the rugged mountains and valleys. The initial investigation is swift. Within 48 hours, teams move into nearby villages around Nanga Parbat. They arrest 37 suspects, a mix of porters, villagers, and locals along the mountain's routes. But it soon becomes clear that most of these suspects are not involved in the attack. They are simply porters who had been working with expeditions. By June 26th, 33 of them are released after questioning, but their statements provide critical leads. They describe seeing armed men in the area days before the attack, moving stealthily toward the base camp. Then, on June 27th, a major breakthrough. The investigation team, with help from the Yurga, manages to identify all 16 attackers. 10 of them are from the Diamir Valley itself, and the other 6 are from Mansira and Kohistan. The attackers are locals, but their training traces back to Fata, the federally administered tribal areas, a known militant stronghold located 760 kilometers away. These are no ordinary criminals. They are well-trained and deeply rooted in militant networks. The search continues, but this time with a clearer focus. On June 30th, authorities close in on Chilas, a nearby town that is often a hideout for criminals and militants. They find one of the attackers, identified as Shafi Muhammad, hiding in a house. His capture is a big step forward. Shafi's arrest offers valuable details about the planning of the attack and the involvement of local networks. Later the same day, another attacker is also captured in Chilas. The arrests fuel optimism, but everyone knows that more work remains. Over the following days, efforts intensify. The police and military keep hunting. On July 6th, they capture another suspect from Chilas. The investigation is gaining traction, but progress is slow. By July 15th, only 4 of the 16 attackers have been caught. This pace frustrates many, including members of the Senate Standing Committee on Foreign Relations, who hold a special meeting to demand faster results. The Chief Secretary of Gilgit-Baltistan, Yunus Dagha, briefs the committee, explaining that this attack was completely unexpected. No foreign tourist had been killed here since 1854, he says. But the Senate is not satisfied. They emphasize that it is the job of intelligence agencies to anticipate such threats, even in seemingly safe areas. Then, on August 7th, tragedy strikes again. Gunmen ambush a vehicle carrying 3 security officials investigating the Nanga Parbat massacre. The attack happens in Chilas around midday. The officials are killed instantly. That turn of events sparks immediate military action. The Pakistan Army enters Chilas in full force on August 8th. This is the first time troops are deployed to the district since the Nanga Parbat massacre. The town is sealed off. Entry and exit points are blocked. Army helicopters hover above, conducting surveillance. The operation targets 4 specific locations, believed to be safe houses for the attackers. By August 11th, several more suspects are detained, though their identities are not disclosed. The military presence in the region sends a clear message. The hunt for the attackers is not over. On August 19th, another major development takes place. The police, supported by military intelligence, manage to arrest the remaining attackers. In total, 20 men are captured, including the core group responsible for the massacre. Among them is the key figure believed to be one of the masterminds behind the Nanga Parbat attack. They also captured another suspect linked to the killing of security officials on August 7th. The authorities confirm that these men were involved in both the massacre and other brutal attacks, like the Kohistan Shia massacre of February 2012. Despite these arrests, the case is far from clear-cut. By mid-2014, questions about the suspects' confessions arise. Of the 18 detainees, only 5 remain in custody. Doubts linger. Some of the arrested men claim they were forced to confess, while others are suspected of being linked to different crimes. One suspect manages to escape capture. He hides in the dense forests of Diamir, releasing audio recordings of militant poetry to taunt the authorities. Efforts to fully solve the case hit several roadblocks. The local Yurga members involved in the investigation voice concerns, suggesting that the government may have mixed up cases, capturing suspects related to other attacks rather than the Nanga Parbat massacre itself. Then, an unexpected twist. On February 27, 2015, 2 inmates escaped from the Gilgit district jail. One of them is Habib-ur-Rahman, a key suspect in the Nanga Parbat attack. He vanishes into the mountains. The authorities launch a massive manhunt, but by March 4th, he's still missing. The Gilgit-Baltistan Home Secretary announces a 2 million rupee reward for anyone providing information leading to his capture. But amid elusive suspects and lingering questions, the case remains unresolved to this day. Sher Khan, one of the few survivors, reflects on the aftermath. He admits that even 2 years later, the trauma has not faded. He struggles with sleep, haunted by memories of gunshots and the sight of fallen climbers. He confesses that he feels a heavy sense of guilt, unable to forget the moment when he was spared while others were brutally killed. For sure, the mountains he once loved now hold a sense of fear. He avoids base camps altogether, feeling they're no longer safe. Meanwhile, Turkish climber Tunç Findik experiences the attack from a different vantage point. On that night in June 2013, Findik was at Camp 2, about 1,000 meters above base camp, preparing for the final ascent. He hears bursts of gunfire but doesn't realize the scale of the attack below. Confused and frightened, he stays in his tent through the night, unsure of what is happening. The next morning, news reaches him about the massacre. Findik and his team descend cautiously, passing base camp as helicopters arrive. The scene is shocking. Tents riddled with bullets, abandoned equipment, and a haunting stillness. For Findik, the mountain becomes more than a physical challenge. It's now a place filled with the memories of lost friends. Yet, he's determined to return. By 2022, he makes 2 more attempts at Nanga Parbat, each time coming face to face with the dangers of avalanches and harsh weather. But the sense of unfinished business drives him on. He believes that reclaiming the mountain on his own terms is the only way to heal. In the broader picture, the Nanga Parbat attack forces Pakistan to rethink its approach to security, especially in remote regions like Gilgit-Baltistan. Tourist numbers decline sharply, and the local economy, reliant on mountaineering, suffers. Authorities increase military presence in key areas, and new safety protocols for foreign climbers are introduced. But fear persists. The mountains, once symbols of adventure and natural beauty, now carry a darker reputation.